The first time Natalie Harper saw Julian Romano again, she nearly dropped a $600 bottle of wine onto the polished floor of Harbour and Ash. For one breathless second, the restaurant disappeared. The candlelit tables, the soft jazz, the winter fog pressing against the tall windows, the wealthy couples whispering over scallops and champagne, all of it blurred until there was only him, Julian, sitting at table 14. At the head of a private table surrounded by men in dark suits who watched the room like they were waiting for someone to make the wrong move. He was older now, sharper, colder. The boy who used to kiss her behind the high school football field had become a man with a tailored black suit, a silver watch, a scar near his mouth, and eyes that looked like they had learned how to bury bodies without blinking. Natalie's fingers tightened around the wine bottle. No, it couldn't be him. Not after 6 years. Not here. Not tonight. One of the men at the table stopped speaking when she approached. Another shifted slightly, his hand disappearing beneath the edge of his jacket. The entire table seemed to recognize danger before Natalie did, but Julian did not move. He simply looked at her. Dark eyes, still the same. That was the cruelest part. Everything else about him had changed, but his eyes still remembered her. Natalie forced air into her lungs and lowered the bottle beside the table. Her black server's uniform suddenly felt too thin, too cheap, too exposing. She could feel the cold from outside still trapped in her bones. She had run 6 blocks through snow because the bus was late, and her sneakers were wet, and her landlord had taped another warning notice to her door that morning. She had no room in her life for ghosts. "Good evening," she said, and her voice almost sounded normal. "Welcome to Harbour and Ash. My name is Natalie, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Silence spread across the table. Julian leaned back in his chair. The candlelight touched the hard lines of his face. His hair was darker than she remembered, shorter, styled with careless precision. He looked expensive, untouchable, dangerous in the way storms were dangerous, beautiful, only if you were watching from far enough away. "Natalie," he said. One word. Her name. Soft, controlled, devastating. Her heart betrayed her instantly. It remembered the way he used to say her name in the back seat of his old truck. It remembered late summer nights, grease on his hands from the garage, his laugh against her neck, his voice promising, "One day, I'm getting us out of here." Then he had disappeared. No goodbye, no call, no funeral, no explanation. Only silence. And 2 months later, a pregnancy test trembling in her hand. Natalie lifted her chin. "Would you like to hear tonight's specials?" The corner of Julian's mouth moved, not quite a smile. One of the men beside him glanced between them, his expression sharpening. Julian never looked away from her. "Scotch. Neat. Of course. Not beer from a gas station anymore. Not the cheap coffee they used to split because neither of them had money. Scotch neat. In a restaurant where the cheapest steak cost more than Natalie made in 4 hours. She wrote down the order, though her hand shook slightly. "And for the rest of you?" she asked. The men ordered with quiet efficiency, but Natalie barely heard them. Her pulse was too loud. Every second under Julian's stare felt like standing too close to fire while pretending not to burn. When she turned to leave, Julian's voice followed her. "It's good to see you again." Natalie stopped. The restaurant noise faded around them. She looked back over her shoulder. "I wish I could say the same." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or anger. But it disappeared so quickly she wondered if she had imagined it. She walked away before he could answer. In the service station near the bar, she gripped the counter until her knuckles whitened. "Natalie," Marcus, the bartender, asked, "You okay? You look like you just saw someone die." She almost laughed. Someone had died. The girl who loved Julian Romano had died 6 years ago in a bathroom with a positive pregnancy test in her hand. "I'm fine," she lied. "Table 14 needs scotch." Marcus glanced toward the private table and lowered his voice. Those guys. Be careful. They're not regular rich. What does that mean? It means the manager told everyone to keep them happy and not ask questions. Natalie looked back. Julian was speaking to one of the men now, his voice low, his expression unreadable. But the others listened as though every word he said carried weight. Power sat on him differently than wealth. Wealth made men careless. Power made them still. Julian was very still. For the next hour, Natalie served his table like her life depended on it. She refilled glasses, cleared plates, smiled when necessary. Avoided looking directly at him, but Julian's presence filled every inch of the room. She felt him when she moved between tables, felt him when she bent to set down silverware, felt him when his gaze followed her toward the kitchen doors. Once, when she placed his drink in front of him, his fingers brushed hers, barely a touch. Nothing. Everything. Heat shot through her hand so violently she nearly pulled back. "Thank you," he said quietly. She did not answer, because if she did, she might scream. By the time Julian's table finished dinner, the snow outside had thickened. White streaks rushed past the windows, turning Boston into a ghost city of wet streets and yellow lights. Natalie placed the leather check folder beside Julian's hand. "Whenever you're ready." He slid a black card inside without looking at the total. Of course he did. When she returned with the receipt, he had written a tip so large she thought it was a mistake. She stared at the number. It would cover Mia's daycare for 3 weeks. Her throat tightened. Then anger saved her. She closed the folder and placed it back on the table. "I can't accept this." Julian's eyes lifted slowly. "Why not?" "Because I served you dinner. I didn't ask for charity." The men at his table went silent. Julian's face changed. Not much, but enough. A warning moved through the air. He stood. Natalie had forgotten how tall he was. Or maybe he had grown into his height, into his shoulders, into the kind of body that made men step aside before they knew why. He moved close enough that she could smell cedar, smoke, and winter on his coat. "It isn't charity," he said. "Then what is it?" His eyes held hers. "An apology." The word struck harder than she expected. For a moment, the years between them cracked open. She saw him at 19, lying beside her on the hood of his truck, pointing at a sky full of stars, telling her she was the only future he wanted. Then she saw herself at 19, sitting alone in a clinic waiting room, praying he would walk through the door. He never did. Natalie stepped back. "Your apology is 6 years late." Julian's jaw tightened. "I know." "No, you don't." She turned to leave, but his hand closed gently around her wrist. The touch was not rough. That made it worse. "Natalie." She looked down at his fingers. Strong, warm, familiar. Then she looked up into his face. "Let go." The room seemed to hold its breath. Julian released her immediately, but his voice, when he spoke, was still calm. "What time do you finish?" A bitter laugh escaped her. "You don't get to ask me that. I need to talk to you. You needed to talk to me 6 years ago." His eyes darkened. "There are things you don't know. There always are, aren't there?" She stepped away. This time, he did not stop her. But when her shift ended at midnight and she pushed out through the employee door into the freezing alley behind the restaurant, Julian was waiting. A black SUV idled behind him. Another sat across the street. Men stood in the shadows, silent as stone. Natalie pulled her coat tighter around herself. It was thin, thrifted, missing one button. She hated that he noticed. "You shouldn't walk alone at this hour," Julian said. "I've been walking alone for 6 years." His face tightened. She moved past him toward the bus stop. He followed. Of course he followed. "Natalie, please." That word stopped her more effectively than a command would have. Please. Julian Romano used to say please when he wanted one more kiss, when he wanted her to stay 5 extra minutes, when he wanted to believe the world was kinder than it was. She turned on him, snow catching in her hair. "What do you want from me?" His control slipped. Only for a second. But she saw it. The hunger, the regret, the disbelief, the rage at time itself. "I came back to Boston for business," he said. "I didn't know you were here. Lucky me. I looked for you before. Not hard enough." His eyes flashed. "You don't know what happened." "No, Julian. I know exactly what happened. You left. I waited. I cried. I called every number I had. I went to the garage. Your uncle told me you were gone and warned me not to ask again." Her voice cracked, and she hated it. "Then I had to stop being a girl with a broken heart because I had someone else to take care of." Julian went very still. The snow fell between them. "What does that mean?" he asked softly. Natalie swallowed. She should not say it here. Not in an alley. Not with black SUVs watching. Not to the man who had already broken her once. But pain had teeth, and hers had been biting her for 6 years. "I have a daughter." Julian did not blink. "How old?" Natalie's chest tightened. She looked away. That was answer enough. "How old, Natalie?" "She's 5. The silence that followed was not empty. It was violent. Julian's face lost all color beneath the restaurant lights spilling from the alley door. 5. He understood immediately. Men like him understood numbers, time, consequences. His voice changed when he spoke again. "Her name?" Natalie's eyes burned. "Mia." Julian's lips parted slightly. "Mia," he repeated, as though the name had entered his body like a wound. A bus hissed to a stop down the street. Natalie stepped backward. "No," Julian said. "Not loud. Not angry, but absolute." "You don't get to do that," she whispered. "You don't get to sound like I took something from you." His expression twisted. "You did." The words hit her like a slap. Then his face changed again, and regret crossed it instantly. "Natalie?" "No." Her voice shook. "I raised her alone. I held her when she had fevers. I worked 2 jobs when she needed shoes. I lied awake wondering how to pay rent and daycare and heating in the same month. You do not get to stand here in a $1,000 coat and tell me I took something from you." Julian looked like she had cut him open. Good. She wanted him to bleed somewhere. Anywhere. Even if only inside. The bus doors opened. Natalie turned and walked away. "Natalie," he called. She stopped at the bus steps but did not turn around. "I want to meet her." Her hand tightened on the railing. "I know," she said. Then she stepped onto the bus and left him standing in the snow. That night, Natalie did not sleep. Mia did. Curled beneath a faded pink blanket in the twin bed beside hers, one small fist tucked beneath her cheek, dark curls spread across the pillow. Julian's curls. Julian's eyes. Julian's stubborn chin. Natalie sat on the edge of her bed and watched her daughter breathe. For 5 years, she had built a small world with both hands. It was not much. A 3rd-floor apartment with unreliable heat, a kitchen table with one wobbly leg, a radiator that groaned like it resented them, a bedroom they shared because rent in Boston punished anyone who dared to be poor. But it was safe. It was theirs. No black cars. No armed men. No ghosts. Until tonight. Mia stirred and whispered in her sleep. "Mommy." Natalie brushed hair away from her face. "I'm here, baby." Always. That had been the promise. Natalie had made it in a hospital room at 19, exhausted and terrified, holding a newborn against her chest while every other girl her age was posting college pictures and party dresses. "I'm here. I won't leave." Now Julian had returned and threatened the one thing Natalie had fought hardest to give Mia: stability. Morning came gray and bitter. Mia woke with bright energy, unaware that the world had shifted. "Can I have toast with the cinnamon sugar?" she asked, dragging her stuffed rabbit by one ear. "If you put on your socks first." Mia groaned dramatically. Socks are boring. So are frozen toes. Mia giggled and climbed into Natalie's lap, all warmth and curls and strawberry shampoo. Natalie held her too tightly. "Mommy?" Mia asked. "You're squishing me." "Sorry. Are you sad?" Natalie closed her eyes. 5 years old, and already too good at reading silence. "No, sweetheart. Just thinking." "About bills?" Natalie laughed softly despite herself. "You are too smart. I heard Mrs. Alvarez say bills make grown-ups tired." "They do." Mia touched Natalie's cheek with tiny fingers. "When I'm big, I'll buy you a castle." Natalie's throat closed. "You already are my castle." At 3 that afternoon, Natalie called Julian. He answered on the first ring. "Natalie." He sounded like he'd been holding his breath since midnight. "We can meet," she said before fear changed her mind. "Public place. Riverside Park. 4 o'clock. You get 30 minutes. You do not bring a crowd of men near my daughter." A pause. Then, quietly, "I'll be there." "And Julian?" "Yes? If you scare her, if you push me, if you try to take control, this is over before it begins." His voice lowered. "I would never scare her." Natalie almost believed him. That was the problem. Riverside Park was nearly empty under a pale winter sky. The playground equipment glittered with frost. The river beyond the path moved dark and slow beneath sheets of broken ice. A few mothers pushed strollers quickly, eager to get back indoors. Mia wore her red coat because it was her favorite. Natalie had braided her curls into 2 uneven braids because Mia had wiggled too much. "Why are we at the park on a school day?" Mia asked, climbing onto a swing. "Special treat. Are we getting cocoa after?" "Maybe. With marshmallows?" "Maybe." "That means yes." Natalie smiled despite the knot in her stomach. "You negotiate like a lawyer." "No, I negotiate like a princess." At exactly 4 o'clock, a black SUV stopped at the curb. Natalie's body went rigid. Julian stepped out. He wore a long black coat over a charcoal suit. Snow dusted his shoulders almost immediately. One man got out after him, older, broad-shouldered and watchful, but he stayed near the vehicle. Natalie appreciated that. She hated that she appreciated anything about Julian. He walked toward them slowly. The moment he saw Mia, he stopped. Everything about him changed. The dangerous stillness fractured. His face went blank first, then raw, then almost young with pain. Mia swung forward and back, laughing as her red coat flashed against the gray afternoon. Julian looked at her like the world had just handed him proof of God and punishment at the same time. Natalie stepped closer to Mia, protective by instinct. "Julian," she said. He looked at her, and his eyes were bright with something he would never allow anyone else to see. "She looks like you," Natalie said. His throat moved. "No," he whispered. "She looks like both of us." The words slipped beneath Natalie's ribs. Mia dragged her boots in the snow to stop the swing. "Mommy? Who is that?" Natalie's heart kicked. Julian lowered himself to one knee several feet away, careful not to come too close. For a man who commanded rooms, he made himself small for her. That broke Natalie more than arrogance would have. "Hi, Mia," he said, his voice gentler than Natalie had ever heard it. "My name is Julian." Mia studied him seriously. "You have shiny shoes." He looked down, as if he had forgotten what shoes were. "I do." "Are you rich?" "Mia," Natalie said quickly. Julian's mouth softened. "I suppose so. Do you have a castle?" "No." Mia seemed disappointed. "Then you're not that rich." A sound escaped Julian. Almost a laugh, almost a sob. "No," he said. "I suppose I have work to do." Mia tilted her head. "Do you know my mommy?" Julian's eyes flicked to Natalie. So many things passed between them. Regret, permission, fear. Natalia gave one tiny nod. "I knew her a long time ago," Julian said. "Before me?" "Yes." Mia looked at Natalie. Was he your boyfriend? Natalie closed her eyes briefly. Julian looked like the question had punched him. He was someone very important to me, Natalie said carefully. Mia accepted this, then pointed at the slide. Do you want to watch me go super fast? Julian nodded solemnly. More than anything, saw Mia run. Julian stood slowly beside Natalie, his gaze following every step. She's perfect, he said. She's a child, Natalie replied. Not a miracle for you to collect. His jaw tightened, but he accepted the blow. I deserved that. You deserve worse. I know. That answer nearly ruined her, because she had expected defense, not agreement. Mia climbed the slide ladder and yelled, "Watch me!" Both Natalie and Julian turned at once. Mia slid down, shrieking with delight. For 1 second, they were not two wounded strangers. They were parents, watching the same child, holding the same breath. Natalie felt the connection and hated it. After 20 minutes of playground performances, Mia returned with red cheeks and snow on her boots. Can we get cocoa now? Julian looked at Natalie. There's a cafe across the street. Natalie wanted to refuse. Pride rose fast and familiar. Then Mia tugged her sleeve. With marshmallows? She whispered. Natalie exhaled. Fine, cocoa. The cafe was warm, cramped, and smelled like chocolate and espresso. Julian's bodyguard stayed outside by the window, pretending not to watch every passing car. Mia noticed. Is that your friend? She asked Julian. Yes. Why is he outside? He likes the cold. Mia frowned. That's weird. Julian nodded. Very weird. Natalie looked down to hide a reluctant smile. Julian ordered cocoa with extra marshmallows, coffee for Natalie, and nothing for himself. He watched Mia blow on her drink with a focus so intense it made Natalie's chest ache. Mia got foam on her nose. Julian reached for a napkin, then stopped. He looked at Natalie first, asking, not taking. That mattered. Natalie wiped Mia's nose herself. Mia sighed. Mommy always does that. Julian's face softened. She takes good care of you. The best, Mia said immediately. Natalie looked away. Julian did not. He looked at her like Mia had confirmed something holy. When Mia became distracted arranging marshmallows into floating islands, Natalie leaned toward Julian. She doesn't know yet. His body went still. I said I'd let you meet her. I didn't say I'd drop the truth into her lap in a coffee shop. He nodded once. When? When I decide she's ready. When you decide. Yes. Natalie's voice hardened. I have been her parent every day of her life. You do not get equal authority after 1 cup of hot chocolate. A flash of frustration crossed his face. Then he forced it down. You're right. Again. The wrong answer. Too reasonable. Too painful. Mia looked up. Are grown-ups fighting? No, Natalie said. Julian answered at the same time. A little. Mia considered this. You should say sorry. Julian looked at Natalie. I'm sorry, he said. Natalie felt the words in places she did not want him to reach. That doesn't fix 6 years. No, he said. But I'll say it for the rest of my life if I have to. The cafe seemed too small suddenly. Too warm. Too dangerous. That evening, after Mia fell asleep, Natalie told her, not everything, only enough. She sat beside her daughter under the pink blanket and held both of Mia's small hands. Remember how I told you your daddy had to go away before you were born? Mia nodded, eyes wide. Julian is your daddy. For a moment, Mia did not move. Then her tiny face crumpled in confusion. The shiny shoes man? Natalie gave a watery laugh. Yes. Mia looked toward the window like she expected him to appear outside. Why didn't he come before? Natalie swallowed. How did you explain danger to a child? How did you explain abandonment when you were still not sure which parts had been choice and which parts had been survival? He didn't know about you, Natalie said softly. Mia frowned. How? Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. Big ones. Did you make a mistake? The question pierced clean. Natalie kissed her hands. Maybe. But you were never the mistake. Never. Mia seemed to think about this. Then she asked, will he go away again? Natalie's eyes burned. I don't know. Mia's face fell. Natalie pulled her close. But I promise you something. I won't. The next evening, Julian came to the apartment. Natalie almost refused to let him inside, not because she feared him, because she feared what he would see. The peeling paint in the hall, the flickering bulb above the stairs, the draft under the front door, the space heater humming near Mia's bed because the radiator never worked properly after 10 at night. Julian entered quietly. He said nothing. That was worse. His eyes moved over everything. The tiny kitchen, the second-hand sofa, the bills stacked beside the sink, Mia's drawings taped proudly to cracked walls. Natalie crossed her arms. Don't. He looked at her. Don't what? Don't stand there calculating how poor we are. His expression tightened. I was calculating how much you survived without me. The answer stole her breath. Mia ran from the bedroom in pajamas covered with stars. Daddy? Julian froze. The word landed between them like a match in gasoline. Natalie's heart stopped. Julian slowly lowered himself to one knee. Yes, sweetheart? Mia held up a picture. I drew you. The drawing showed a tall stick figure in black beside a small girl in red and a woman with yellow hair that Natalie did not have. Julian took the paper, like it was worth more than his entire empire. This is beautiful. You can keep it, Mia said. His voice roughened. Thank you. Natalie turned away before either of them could see what it did to her. Later, after Mia showed Julian every toy she owned and negotiated 2 bedtime stories out of him, he stood in the living room with his hands in his coat pockets. She called me Daddy, he said. Natalie picked up a mug from the table. She's 5. She also called a pigeon her lawyer last week. Julian almost smiled. Then his gaze fell on the bills again. Natalie. No. You don't know what I'm going to say. You're going to offer money. I'm going to take responsibility. Those are not the same thing. He stepped closer. The room seemed to shrink around him. They are, when my daughter sleeps beside a space heater, because the building can't provide heat. Natalie flinched. Julian saw it and softened his voice. I'm not judging you. It feels like it. I'm angry at myself. Good, she whispered. You should be. I am. His voice dropped. Every second I look at her, pain moved between them, old and new. Julian reached into his coat and placed an envelope on the table. Natalie stared at it. No. For Mia. No. Rent, heat, daycare, whatever she needs. Natalie's laugh was brittle. And what do you need, Julian? A thank you? Forgiveness? A key to my life? His eyes darkened. I want my family safe. We are not your family because you decided we are. Yes, he said quietly. You are. The possessiveness should have enraged her. It did. But it also wrapped around something exhausted inside her. Something that had wanted, for years, to stop carrying everything alone. She hated that part most. You can be her father, Natalie said. But you don't get to own us. Julian looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'll learn the difference. 3 days later, the first warning came. Natalie found it taped to her apartment door after her hotel shift. A white envelope. No stamp. No name. Inside was a photograph of Mia leaving daycare. Natalie's blood turned to ice. On the back, written in black ink, were 6 words. Romano men bleed through their children. She called Julian before she realized she was doing it. He answered instantly. Natalie? She could not speak. What happened? Her silence told him enough. His voice changed. Lock the door. Move Mia away from the windows. I'm coming. He arrived in 7 minutes. 7. Natalie counted. 2 SUVs, 4 men, Julian at the front, no coat. Fury held so tightly inside him it seemed to distort the air. He took the photograph from Natalie's trembling hand. The moment he saw it, every trace of tenderness left his face. This was the man Marcus had warned her about. Not rich, not powerful. Worse, feared. Who? Natalie whispered. Julian's jaw flexed. Enzo Bellini. Who is that? A mistake I should have ended sooner. Her stomach turned. Don't say things like that in my home. His eyes cut to her, then to Mia's closed bedroom door. He lowered his voice. Pack a bag. No, this building is compromised. I said no. Julian stepped closer. Natalie, listen to me. Whoever delivered this knows where Mia lives, where she goes to school, and when you work. I will not gamble with her safety because you're angry at me. I'm not angry. Her voice broke. I'm terrified. That stopped him. The fury in him shifted. Not gone. Redirected. He reached for her, then stopped just before touching her. His hand hovered in the space between them. A near touch. A question. Natalie hated how badly she wanted to lean into it. I know, he said quietly. And I'm sorry. You brought this to us. Yes. No denial. No excuse. Yes. And now I'm going to protect you from it. Natalie's eyes filled. You don't understand. I protected her from hunger, from cold, from disappointment, from asking why everyone else had a dad at school breakfast and she didn't. But I don't know how to protect her from men like you. Julian's face broke. Just a little. Enough. You shouldn't have to. Natalie looked at him then, really looked, at the power, the control, the violence under his skin, and beneath it, the boy who had once fixed her grandmother's broken heater for free because he couldn't stand the thought of Natalie being cold. Both men were real. That was the danger. She packed one bag. Julian moved them that night, not to a hotel, to the top floor of a secure building overlooking Boston Harbor. Natalie stepped out of the elevator and froze. The apartment was warm, bright, impossible. Floor-to-ceiling windows, soft rugs, a kitchen bigger than her entire old living room, 3 bedrooms, a view of black water glittering beneath city lights. Mia gasped. Mommy, is this a castle? Natalie's throat tightened. No, baby. Julian stood behind them. It can be home for now. Natalie turned on him. For now, he nodded. He had learned not to argue every word. That night, Mia slept in a room with a bed shaped like a little white house and shelves already filled with books. Natalie stood in the doorway long after Mia fell asleep. She always wanted her own room, she whispered. Julian stood beside her, close but not touching. I know. She looked at him sharply. How would you know? His expression softened. Because you would have wanted that for her. The answer landed too gently. Natalie looked away. In the following weeks, Julian became a constant shadow at the edge of their lives. Not always present, but always there. A driver took Mia to daycare. Security appeared without feeling obvious. The apartment's pantry filled itself. Bills vanished before Natalie could panic over them. She hated that. She also slept through the night for the first time in years. Julian came for dinner twice a week. At first, Natalie kept every conversation about Mia, her school, her food allergies, her bedtime, her fear of loud thunder, her obsession with books about brave princesses and dragons who were secretly lonely. Julian listened like a man memorizing scripture. He learned fast, too fast. By the 3rd visit, he knew Mia liked pancakes cut into stars. By the 4th, he knew she hated peas unless they were hidden in pasta. By the 5th, he had learned to braid badly and let Mia laugh at him while he tried. Natalie watched it all with a heart divided against itself. There were moments when Julian almost looked peaceful. On the living room floor, sitting cross-legged in a $5,000 suit while Mia placed plastic crowns on his head. At the kitchen island, listening seriously while Mia explained why dragons were misunderstood. At bedtime, reading slowly because Mia corrected him when he skipped words. Those moments were dangerous. Not because they frightened Natalie, because they didn't. But danger did not stay outside forever. One night, after Mia fell asleep, Julian received a call. He stepped onto the balcony. Natalie did not mean to listen, but his voice carried through the glass, low and lethal. "No, you do not touch Bellini until I say so. A pause. If he comes near them again, then I'll bury every name connected to his." Natalie's skin went cold. When Julian returned inside, she was waiting. "Is that what this is?" she asked. "A war?" His face closed. "No, don't lie to me. It's not a war yet." The word yet spread between them. Natalie wrapped her arms around herself. "I can't do this." His eyes sharpened. "Do what?" "Live behind glass and guards while pretending Mia is safe because you say she is. She is safe. She was safer before you came back." Julian went still. The blow landed exactly where she aimed it. Natalie regretted it instantly, but she did not take it back. His voice, when he answered, was quiet. "You're right." She blinked. "I know I brought danger to your door," he said, "but it was already looking for me. Enzo would have found you eventually. The moment I saw you in that restaurant, every camera, every waiter, every man at that table became a thread someone could pull. You should have stayed away. I tried that once." His eyes held hers. "It cost me 6 years of my daughter's life." Natalie's anger trembled. "Why didn't you come back?" she asked. "The real reason, not the clean version." Julian looked toward the windows. Boston glittered behind him. "My father was murdered 3 days after I told him I wanted out. I wanted to marry you. I told him I didn't care about Romano business, Romano blood, Romano enemies. I was done." Natalie stopped breathing. "He laughed at me," Julian continued. "Then he told me men like us don't get innocent lives. The next night, he was shot outside his club." Natalie's hand covered her mouth. Julian's expression remained controlled, but his voice had gone hollow. "My uncle took over. He told me whoever killed my father would use anything I loved to finish the family. He showed me photographs." Natalie whispered, "Of me?" Julian nodded once. "They knew where you lived, where you worked, what bus you took. I thought if I disappeared, they would stop watching you. You could have told me. I was 19, and stupid, and terrified." His eyes cut to hers. "And by the time I had enough power to look for you safely, you were gone. I moved after Mia was born. I know that now." The silence that followed felt heavier than anger. For 6 years, Natalie had imagined 1,000 reasons. Another woman, cowardice, indifference. She had never imagined fear wearing the face of abandonment. It did not erase the pain, but it changed its shape. Julian stepped closer. "I loved you," he said. "I was brutal enough to leave, but not brave enough to watch what it did to you. That is my sin, not yours." Natalie's eyes burned. "Don't make me forgive you too fast." His voice softened. "I'm not asking for fast. What are you asking for?" A chance to earn slow. The space between them thinned. Julian lifted his hand, then stopped. Again, always stopping now, letting her choose. Natalie stared at his hand, then at his face. Then she stepped back. "I'm going to bed." Pain crossed his eyes, but he nodded. "Good night, Natalie." 3 nights later, Enzo Bellini appeared in person. Not at the apartment, at Harbor and Ash. Natalie had returned to work, because refusing Julian's money had become her last piece of pride. She was carrying plates to table 8 when a man in a pale gray suit sat alone near the window. "Beautiful. Cruel. Wrong." He smiled when she approached. "Natalie Harper." She froze. "I hear you're very important to Julian Romano." Every instinct in her body screamed. She set the plates down at the nearest empty table. I don't know who you are. No, but you know what I am. His smile widened. Tell Julian his daughter is lovely. Natalie's body went cold. Enzo stood, leaving a folded napkin on the table. Family makes men predictable. Predictable men die badly. He walked out. Natalie reached for the napkin with shaking hands. Inside was a small silver hair clip. Mia's. The one she had worn to daycare that morning. Natalie ran to the restroom and threw up. Julian arrived like a storm. Not loudly. No shouting. No scene. That made it worse. He entered through the side door with 2 men behind him, black coat open, eyes empty in a way Natalie had never seen. When she showed him the hair clip, he closed his fist around it until his knuckles whitened. Where is Mia? Natalie asked. Safe. My men are at the school. She never knew anything happened. Natalie slept him. The sound cracked through the back hallway. Julian's men moved. Julian lifted one hand, stopping them instantly. He did not touch his cheek. He did not look angry. He looked ruined. You said she was safe, Natalie whispered. She is. He touched her hair. Julian's eyes went black. Yes. The hallway seemed to darken around him. Natalie took a step back. For the first time, she saw what the world saw when it looked at Julian Romano. Not the boy. Not the father. The monster. And the terrible thing was, for one savage second, she wanted that monster unleashed. Then she remembered Mia. No killing, she said. His eyes lifted to hers. He threatened our child. Our child is 5. And if you turn this into a bloodbath, that is the legacy you hand her. Julian stared at her. The battle inside him was visible. Rage against restraint. Empire against family. Violence against the woman, asking him to be more than what the world made him. Finally, he said, "Come with me." Where? To end this without Mia ever knowing his name. The end came at the winter recital. Not because Julian failed to prepare, because Enzo Bellini was patient. Mia's daycare hosted a small performance in a church basement decorated with paper snowflakes and crooked stars. Children wore cotton beards and angel wings. Parents filmed with phones. Teachers whispered instructions near a plastic Christmas tree. Natalie sat in the second row. Julian stood at the back near the exit, because he said Mia would look for Natalie first, and he did not want to distract her. But Natalie knew the truth. He stood there because he could see every door. Mia spotted him anyway, and waved so hard her paper crown slipped. Julian smiled. A real smile. Small. Unprotected. Natalie saw it, and felt her heart betray her again. Then the lights flickered. Once. Twice. The room went dark. A child screamed. Natalie stood instantly. Mia. Emergency lights washed the basement red. People moved in confusion. Julian was already crossing the room. Then a man dressed as a maintenance worker grabbed Mia from beside the stage. Natalie's world narrowed to one sound. Her daughter crying. She ran. No thought. No fear. Only Mia. The man dragged Mia toward the side hallway. Natalie slammed into him with everything she had. They hit the wall. Mia fell sideways, sobbing. Natalie grabbed her daughter and shoved her behind a stack of folding chairs. "Run to Daddy!" she screamed. Mia ran. Julian caught her halfway across the room. For 1 second, his arms closed around her so tightly Natalie thought he might never let go. Then he looked up. His eyes found the man, and death entered the room. Enzo Bellini appeared near the side door, clapping slowly. "Touching," he said. The great Julian Romano playing father in a basement. Julian handed Mia to one of his men without looking away from Enzo. Natalie saw his hand move toward his coat. "Julian," she said. Her voice cut through the chaos. He stopped. She stood between scattered chairs and fallen paper stars, breathing hard, hair loose, one sleeve torn. "No," she said. Enzo laughed softly. She has you trained. Julian's face remained calm. Too calm. No, he said. She has me thinking. Police sirens wailed outside. Enzo's smile faltered. Julian tilted his head. You thought I would kill you here. In front of children. In front of witnesses. In front of my daughter. Enzo's eyes narrowed. Julian stepped closer. But Natalie was right. That would make this your kind of story. The doors burst open. Police entered with federal agents behind them. Enzo looked from them to Julian, disbelief spreading across his face. Julian's voice was cold. So I changed the ending. Enzo was arrested beneath paper snowflakes while children cried and parents whispered. Natalie stood shaking. Julian turned toward her. For the first time since she had known him, he looked uncertain. Not weak, never weak, but afraid of what she would see. Mia broke free from the bodyguard and ran to Natalie first. Natalie dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around her daughter. Julian stood a few feet away, his hands empty, waiting. Mia looked back at him. Daddy? His face cracked. He knelt immediately. Mia ran into his arms. Julian closed his eyes. Natalie watched him hold their daughter beneath red emergency lights, surrounded by police, shattered chairs, and the ruins of the world he had tried to keep from them. The monster had come to the edge of violence, and stopped. For Mia, for Natalie, for the man he was trying to become. After that night, Julian disappeared for 4 days. Not from their lives, from the streets. News moved quietly through Boston. Several Romano businesses changed ownership. 3 private clubs shut their doors. A shipping company announced restructuring. Men who used to gather around Julian stopped appearing in public. When he finally came back to the harbor apartment, he looked exhausted. Older. Human. Natalie opened the door before he knocked. They stood facing each other in silence. Mia was asleep. The city was silent, beyond the glass. I signed away the last of it today, Julian said. Natalie's throat tightened. The criminal side? What could be signed away? What couldn't be signed away was burned. Is it over? He gave a faint, tired smile. No, men like me don't get clean endings overnight. Natalie looked down. But it's begun, he said, because you asked me to choose. She lifted her eyes, and his voice softened. I chose. The space between them trembled. Natalie wanted to stay angry. Some part of her would always be angry. For the girl who waited. For the mother who struggled. For the years he missed. But love, real love, was not the absence of wounds. Sometimes it was the decision not to let the wound become the whole story. Julian stepped closer, slowly. I know I don't deserve you. No, Natalie said. He stopped. She looked up at him. You don't. Pain crossed his face, but he nodded. But Mia deserves a father who shows up, Natalie continued. And I deserve a man who asks instead of takes. Julian's eyes darkened with emotion. So ask, she whispered. His breath caught. The most powerful man in Boston looked almost afraid. May I stay? He asked. Natalie's eyes filled. Tonight? His voice lowered. As long as you'll let me. She should have answered with rules. Condition. Boundaries. Instead, she stepped forward and rested her forehead against his chest. Julian went completely still. Then his arms came around her, slow and careful, like he was holding something breakable and sacred. Natalie closed her eyes. He smelled like snow and smoke and the life she had lost. But beneath it, he smelled like home. Months later, snow fell again over Boston Harbor. Not cruel snow this time. Soft snow, morning snow, the kind that made the city quiet instead of lonely. Natalie woke to laughter. She followed the sound down the hallway of the harbor apartment, barefoot, wrapped in an oversized sweater that belonged to Julian. In the kitchen, Mia stood on a stool wearing a tiny apron covered in flour. Julian Romano stood beside her in black pajama pants and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking far more serious than pancakes required. "Daddy," Mia said, "that one is not a star. That one is a potato." Julian studied the pancake. A noble potato. Mia giggled so hard she nearly dropped the spatula. Natalie leaned against the doorway. For a moment, she did not speak. She simply watched, her daughter safe, warm, love. Her first love standing in morning light, no guards visible, no black suit, no blood on his hands. Not innocent. Never innocent. But changed. Trying. Julian looked up and saw her. Something passed between them. The old ache. The new trust. The fragile, impossible life they had built from ruins. Mia waved the spatula. "Mommy, Daddy made breakfast and only burned 2. "Only 2, Natalie said. "That's progress." Julian lifted an eyebrow. "I was told burnt pancakes were a family tradition." Natalie walked to him. Mia was busy arranging blueberries into a smiley face. Julian lowered his voice. "Good morning." Natalie looked at him for a long second. Then she touched the scar near his mouth. "You're still here." His expression softened. "I told you," he said. "Never again." Natalie rose on her toes and kissed him. Not because everything was easy. Not because the past had vanished. But because he had stayed. Because he had chosen. Because the monster had learned to kneel in the snow for a little girl in a red coat. And because Natalie Harper, who had survived alone for so long, had finally learned that being strong did not mean refusing every hand reaching for hers. Outside, Boston glittered white beneath the morning sun. Inside, Mia demanded extra chocolate chips. Julian obeyed immediately. Natalie laughed, and for the first time in years, the sound did not feel stolen. It felt like something returned, something rebuilt, something dangerous, imperfect, and finally theirs. The darkness had not disappeared, but love had given it a home. And in that home, Julian Romano was no longer just the man everyone feared. He was a father, a protector, a man forgiven slowly. And the first love Natalie had lost, found again in the one place she never expected. At her table, in the snow, with their daughter's eyes staring back at him.